I was thinking of this feast, and just a quick question. I thought of a group of people. Where are the runners out there? Raise your hand if you're a runner, especially I'm thinking of longer distance, cross-country team. Even if you're not on the team here, raise your hand if you like to run. Adults, you too. Raise your hand if you've ever run a marathon or a half marathon. Keep your hands up nice and high. All right, look around. There are a few hands up here. I'm going to put my hand down because I hate it. All right, put your hands down. All you people who just had your hands up, I don't get you people. I don't get you. I don't get you at all. I've never run a marathon. I've never run a half marathon. I have no desire or intention or even a daydream of running a marathon or a half marathon. I run because my doctor says it's important to stay healthy. So that's why I run, but I hate it. I hate it. So I don't understand folks who love it. And people really love it. But here's the thing. Runners, like all of you who had your hands up, you have helped me to understand today's feast a little better. During my Jesuit formation is a long, long time. And during my Jesuit formation, I was sent to study theology at Boston College. And I lived for 3 years in a community that was just a couple of blocks from the route of the Boston Marathon. Before I moved to Boston, I never saw a marathon, I never went to a marathon, I never thought of marathons, let alone the marathon of all marathons, right? Boston. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what to expect being in Boston on what they call Marathon Monday, which is a federal holiday in Boston. But my first year there, a group of us Jesuits, we took the 5-minute walk up to Commonwealth Ave, the route of the marathon, to see what we could see. And guys, I have never experienced anything like it. Raise your hand if you've ever been to a marathon to watch, if you haven't run in it. All right, so a few more hands. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. In Boston, they say that 500,000 people line the route of the Boston Marathon. And they stand there to cheer on 30,000 runners who pass by. And what really struck me, what I found really beautiful, to be honest, is that the people around us, the people who were there cheering, with us, didn't just wait to cheer for the handful of people they knew when they ran by. Right? They weren't there just to cheer for their loved ones or their friend or whoever it may be. They cheered for everyone. They cheered for everyone. There was an entire culture of cheering at the Boston Marathon. I spent 3 hours standing next to a guy in a hot dog suit who was there to cheer for whoever. He had a cowbell and he was a lot of fun, but really loud and obnoxious. It was an entire culture of cheering. They brought bells and noisemakers. We cheered our hearts out for tens of thousands of people we had never met and would never meet again. And what struck me even more is that we weren't cheering for something that had already happened, right? Something that had once been great and was now in the past. We were cheering for something that was still in progress, something that hadn't been fulfilled or finished yet. Our cheers, maybe your cheers, those of you who have done this, were shouts of encouragement for something that was still underway. You've got this. Stay strong. You're looking good. We cheered for the runners as they passed us. We cheered them on to their final goal. And they were fueled by it. They ran past and waved their arms up like this. Bring it on. Cheer louder. We were literally helping to carry these runners to the finish line. It was the closest I think I'll ever get in this life to glimpsing the communion of saints. Today, the solemnity of All Saints, we honor countless women and men who have lived heroic Christian lives and now are basking in their eternal reward, enjoying God's presence for all eternity. Since the very beginnings of the church, Christians have looked to the saints not just as passive role models to hang on a poster in your bedroom, but as people who are alive and active, who even today still cheer all of us on toward our final goal. In other words, gents, today is the Boston Marathon of feast days. Today's the Boston Marathon of feast days. We remember that as all of us run this marathon of life, we are surrounded by what the first reading describes as a great multitude which no one could count, of every nation, race, people, and tongue. A great multitude who lift us up and cheer us on toward our final goal. I find this incredibly consoling, and I hope you do too. But as consoling and comforting as this image might be for us, it places a massive challenge right in front of us. As I mentioned, I work in the vocations office for the Jesuits, which means my main job is to accompany young men who are discerning, who are trying to figure out if God might be calling them to live and serve as a Jesuit. I hope at some point in your lives, you all at least give it a second of thought, just to consider the possibility. But here's the important thing. Before we can talk about whether a young man should be a Jesuit or not, whether God's calling him or not, we have to talk about the fundamental vocation that underlies everything else. Everyone, all of us, share a common vocation. It's what the Second Vatican Council calls the universal call to holiness. Fellas, each of us, before anything else, before considering to be a Jesuit or a husband or a father or a fireman or a lawyer, each of us is called to be holy. In other words, before anything else, each one of us is called to be a saint. I'll say that again. All of you, brothers and sisters, are called to sainthood. Now I urge you, resist the temptation to scoff at this remark, to balk at it, resist the temptation to be intimidated or frightened by it, as if being a saint is some far-off idea that only applies to people who are holier than you. Because I promise you, that is not the case. You are students at a Jesuit school named for the very first pope. And neither Peter nor Ignatius Loyola were models of perfection or holiness for most of their lives. Peter was a bit of a loudmouth who got things wrong all the time. And once he even denied Jesus right to his face. And Ignatius, well, that guy had a criminal record. He was arrested during the carnival of 1515, and his official police arrest record charges him with premeditated and enormous crimes. Yet here we stand today, sub umbra Petri and ad maiorem Dei gloria, with Peter and Ignatius as our models. Friends, sainthood has nothing to do with being perfect. It has nothing to do with being perfect, but it does have a whole lot to do with cheering one another on and lifting each other up. So, my challenge to you today, be saints. Be saints. Men of St. Peter's Prep, be saints. And begin right here at home. Cheer each other on and lift each other up. Go to a sports event that you've never been to before. Imagine if the entire student body showed up to one of the bowling team's matches or the fencing team's meets. Go and cheer on your prep brothers. Be there for a friend who's having a rough time. Encourage one another before walking in to take a hard test. And check in with each other afterwards to see how it went. Go to the Christmas concert and the spring show. And be there for your classmates, even if you have no idea what their name is. Compliment a teacher on a great lesson. Guys, as a former teacher myself, it goes a long way. And make sure you support and thank and lift up the facilities and cafeteria staff here for all the hard work they do on your behalf. Celebrate victories fiercely and comfort one another in defeat. And above all else, pray for each other. I mean it. Really pray for each other. Pray for your friends and for those in this school whom you have never met. When you see someone sitting across the lunchroom who looks like he's having a rough day, lift him up to God and pray for him. Lift one another up. Lift one another up to God, who we worship today and who is the reason this place exists at all. And then, my friends, imagine. What if we all actually did this? What if you actually lived as saints? What if this St. Peter's Prep community took seriously your call to holiness and spent the time lifting each other up? Then, and I promise you this is true, the best place in this life to catch a glimpse of the communion of saints will not be Boston, and it won't even be that other city across the river from here. It will be right here at the corner of Grand and Warren in Jersey City, New Jersey. Let's go Marauders.